Hi, everybody. I'm Kalina Olson. I do a lot of the support for the Serenity Now Wellness Centre when it comes to their social media engagement. And yeah, we have a great topic today to discuss. I'm being joined by the owner and psychologist at Serenity Now Wellness, Tessa Martin, as well as the owner of Clever Canines here in Calgary. And just one of the topics we heard was coming up a lot just by on the social media wavelength and everything that's been changing with COVID is a lot of people are noticing significant changes in their dogs at home. Yeah, before we get too much into the topic, I'll let my two guests here introduce themselves. Go ahead, Tessa.
Hi, I'm Tessa Martin. I'm the owner and registered psychologist with Serenity Now Wellness. And I thought that today this would be a great topic because I don't know much about dog behavior, but what I'm noticing is some of the struggles that people are having in terms of being out of routine and sometimes relying a little bit too much on their pets. So I thought that it'd be great to hear what that means for our pets and make sure that we're engaging in the most appropriate steps to take care of our animals.
Awesome. Great, thanks. And Tracie.
Hello, I'm Tracie Nielsen. I'm the owner and founder of Clever Canines. We started Clever Canines in 2005, so we're celebrating our 15th year this year. We offer daycare and training.
Wonderful. Awesome. Well, yeah, Tracie, wow, since 2005. So you have had a lot more interaction with dogs as well as dog owners than the average person. Can you speak to some of the changes you yourself have observed behaviorally since this hashtag stay-at-home movement and the self-isolating has begun? And yeah, maybe share some insight into some changes in our canine friends.
Yeah, our dogs are certainly getting a lot more attention, and whether that be exercise or just being around people, being around their family members more often. That can be a great thing and it can be a tricky thing for dogs. I deal a lot with behavior and a lot of challenges that come from changes in behavior. So what we are noticing on on that end of things is that some dogs are feeling a little frustrated because their routines are upside down. Some dogs are getting socially frustrated because they don't have the same social outlets that they used to. And then we have some challenges with puppies who people are getting puppies, but there's not a great opportunity for socialization, which there's some critical time periods. So we're seeing in one way, there's dogs that are getting more attention, more training, more focus. And that can be really good things, and kind of balancing that with the amount of time that the dog has spent with others versus alone. Those are things that we're looking at to help people find some sort of norm in this new norm.
Yeah, exactly, right? That's exactly it, the new normal. And Tessa, can you speak to, I mean, there's obviously a lot of extra ambient anxiety out there. People are stressed, and a lot of us are looking to our number one go-to emotional support family members, and that often ends up being our dogs. Yeah, is that good? What is the benefit of using them to support us at this time?
Well, I don't know what the implications are for the dogs, but I know that a lot of people turn to their pets because the actual physical act of petting your dog or being around dogs, that naturally lowers our heart rates. And so it's really good for people when they're feeling like a lot of people are in a really heightened state right now. Like the emotional regulation strategies have been completely gone out the window for most people because the things that we would normally do to do self-care, to be able to regulate our bodies are often taken away from us, like gym or social activities, things like that. So like as a general rule, I feel like a lot of people are at a much higher anxiety level. They're buzzing a little bit more. And so they are turning to their dogs. And the only thing that a lot of people have as an outlet now for self-care is the regular dog walks that they would be taking. And so
Yeah.
that can be, that feels like people are starting to get movement, which I think is great for people to get out and about. But I think that Tracie can speak to how that impacts.
Yeah. So Tracie, that's the thing. Like, what are some of those behavioral changes? I did see a funny meme where the dog's looking at the owner with the leash, like, not another walk. Do they give us signs and symbols? How do we better listen to our dogs if they are being overstimulated? What are the things? I have a young child. So, do they need alone time? Like, she's at home now all day, and they're also a big source of entertainment with her. I also notice my dogs are getting a lot of extra table scraps because she's home, we're home. And yeah, they were kind of looking to them. So how do we tell getting overstimulated if perhaps we are using them too much as our comfort? Is there too much, and how do we know?
Yeah, there's a lot of questions in there. Dogs thrive with routine and structure. So one of the things that's happened is prior to being self-isolation and prior to COVID-19, dogs had a certain type of routine that they kind of come to expect, whether that be that the dog is at home during the day while the owners are off at work and the children are off at school. They were used to a certain type of routine, and when they have that type of structure, they thrive. And the reason they thrive is because it becomes predictable and they know what to expect. And that builds confidence. So if they know what's going to happen and, if they do this, that happens, or, this is what's going to take place next, they can predict that and it builds their confidence. And so a confident dog is, easy, they're kind of easier in a lot of ways because they tend to not shrink away. Fear is not a concern. They are less likely to have separation anxieties or those type of other types of behaviors. So now that people are at home, their routines have just been upended. And there's no explanation for the dog. The dog cannot understand why everything has changed. Humans, we have the mental capacity to figure it out, but our dogs are just receiving the reaction of our behaviors. People are also very different right now. So people are acting nervous, they're acting strange, and in the eyes of the dog, this creates confusion and it creates an uncomfortable feeling for them. And then that can trigger certain uncertainties. And those uncertainties then will show up in anxieties or reactivity or nervousness, or sometimes a dog becomes way more goofy, way more clown-like. Some dogs become less tolerable or less patient, and so then they can become snappy. So just recently, I actually just got off the phone just a little while ago from someone whose dog, she's 6 years old. She has never had any sort of reactivity or shown any aggression at all, but she just bit someone. And the owners are like, I don't understand. It seems like it came out of the blue. And it wasn't a severe bite, but they were surprised and shocked as you would be when, a dog bites a person. But their change is different. They have so much change. They have 2 kids. They're both at home all the time. The kids are young. They're 8 years and also 6, so 6 and 8 years old. And they are busy and they are bored, and the dog is not getting the same amount of rest that it used to get. So the dog does need some sort of form of that structure to help them to be able to relax and predict what's going to happen. So structure and routine, again, is really important. And giving them opportunity to rest. They need that. One of the things that we often look at is when everybody goes back to work, what are those routines? And how can you somehow create those or give those to the dog? So if the dog's going to be resting for 10 hours a day when everybody goes back to work, how can you give the dog maybe not the full amount of time, but make sure that they do have some carved out alone time as well?
Right. And what would you say, like, obviously there was probably definitely not to armchair criticize the people, but there was probably a bit of behavioral indication leading up to the biting. Maybe there was, maybe there wasn't. As dog owners, what can we look for to see if our dog is kind of reacting differently leading up to that? Would it just be restlessness or, yeah?
I think to know what's normal for your dog is really important. So, and hopefully owners would know kind of what was normal. Sometimes when they're home more often, they don't actually see the changes that could be actually happening. So I like to kind of break it down into what is happening that's different, that's a little unusual for the dog. And there are kind of three different like categories, if you will, that a dog could start to show that change of behavior. One is they could become a little bit more clown-like, more goofy. And so that might look like they're playing with more toys than they've ever played with before, that they're seeking other objects for play. So maybe they're all of a sudden grabbing shoes and wanting you to chase them around the house is, you know, what it might look like. They also might be more jumpy or more energetic, more bouncy. They just seem a little bit more excited. And it might not be throughout the whole day. It would just be periods of the day that you would see this. Another thing would be that the dog becomes a little bit more nervous or insecure. And so that could show up where they are, or fear-based. So that could show up with them wanting to hide or retreat. So they might want to crawl under a table, or they're, you know, all of a sudden they're behind the house. My dog yesterday, I found him hiding behind the pillow on my bed. So he's always laid on the pillow, but this time he was wedged between the headboard and the pillow. That's where he was. And I've never seen him do that before. So they kind of might find some sort of ways to escape, maybe sneak upstairs when no one's looking, or those sort of things. And then the third kind of category would be the dog who's showing less tolerance or lack of patience. And that might come where you might see that in little things where the dog maybe used to be able to hold a stay really well, but now they're a little bit more antsy and they are breaking those commands that they used to be really good at. Or maybe they are uncomfortable around other people that they maybe once were comfortable with. They don't really want to be touched, or they don't want to be pet. They also might freeze, like stop moving and stare in certain situations. And they'll try to also avoid, but they might also come forward and they might bark a little bit more demanding. They might become a little bit more bossy. So those are kind of the three categories. And sometimes for most people, when they start to see these changes, they're so subtle at the beginning that you kind of have to know what's normal for the dog to go, oh, isn't that interesting? You know, like when my dog Presley is like, isn't that interesting? He's behind the pillow. And instead of laughing it off, starting to think about what that might mean. What is he trying to ask for that we could maybe help and be intuitive with?
Right. Yeah. Exactly. So you just wanted to be a little bit warmer, a little cozy. And isn't that funny to you, Tessa? I was just thinking as I heard all of her answers, like, wow, I've seen those behaviors sort of mirrored in a lot of people I know. It's sort of like the fight, flight, freeze response as you were speaking to yesterday. So yeah, to Tessa, like, that's interesting. And it made me think, you know, as we do depend more on our animals for support and stuff, but perhaps they're kind of trying to navigate their own way through the situation. How do we know if maybe we are depending too much on our dogs? And is there too much that, you know, what are some other resources if we are finding that? I've noticed in a lot of friends just, you know, way more posting of our animals because we're around them more. But how do we know within ourselves if it's time to reach out to some other resources and maybe give our pets a break?
Well, I think that the most important thing is that we should always be relying on ourselves to be able to emotionally regulate, because if you're looking to something else to emotionally regulate, whether that be a pet or a person or a substance, you're going to get yourself into a sticky situation, because if that is not being reciprocated in the right way, then you don't have the self-soothing techniques. So a lot of the things from a brain perspective is that Brainstem activity is being challenged right now because we're not in routine, and that's our very basic function, is to be in routine and rhythm, right? That's the brainstem is all about rhythms in your body. We have no rhythms going, right? So that's then sending us into fight, flight, freeze, so that if, and then maybe Tracie could talk more about like how, like with people, what will end up happening is if you're in that system, most of the time, if you don't have proper emotional regulation systems, we have mirror neurons in our body. So we will be looking to other people, and then they will then usually reflect back that same thing. So if I am like, oh my God, I'm freaking out, you will look at me, and unless you have the appropriate tools to be able to manage that, you're going to be like, why are we freaking out? Right? So I don't know what the answer is from the like how much to rely on your pets for these things, but I think from my perspective, it's always about making sure you are doing the things you need to do to get yourself regulated, because whether it's your pets or your kids or the other people around you, a lot of people are looking to you to see like how you're going to be. And so
Right.
you can be the model for that calm, centered grounding.
Interesting. It reminds me of that opening scene in 101 Dalmatians where the dog sort of matches the owner after a while. And I kind of find that interesting, Tracie. Like, when do you find that dogs obviously do pick up on our ambient anxiety, but do you see that in people, like people who are fight, flight, or freeze? Are our animals and dogs specifically picking up on that? And do we need to maybe check that before we come back into a house where our animal's been?
Yeah, so dogs are fantastic at social referencing. So a lot of times they take their cues for how they need to react by what's going on around them. So that could be the energy of the environment, from anything from noise or smells and movement in the area. But a lot of it comes from us. So as owners, I usually tell clients that our emotions and our state trickle right down the leash, right to our dog. And there's no way to really hide that from our dogs. They're awfully sensitive and acute, and some dogs more so than others, but they will pick up on that. So when we're going for a walk, and in my neighborhood, it is so busy right now. There are so many people, even non-dog owners, out for a walk. I've never seen so many non-dog owners walking. And but it's way busier, and people are avoiding everybody. So we're all trying to give each other the space. And as we go through this avoidance, and in some cases when the environment becomes a lot more narrow and there's less space to pass, if the owner holds their breath or is nervous or is acting strange, the dog will definitely pick up on it. So some dogs are so sensitive, they can pick up on the change of our breathing patterns. They can pick up on the scent that's released when our pheromones change from going from nervous to comfortable or confident. So they can pick up on those things, and then they could respond. So they could respond by wanting to protect their owner, or maybe they want to get out in front, and you'd see the same sort of things, the three different things: clown-like, fear, or more being irritable or less tolerant. So I know one of the things that is also common on the dog side right now is an increase of reactivity, and that's happening on leash. And that's a lot of times because in the past, what we would do is we'd go for a walk, and if you have a dog that's really nice and is good with other dogs, and then you come across a person walking with a dog, and you ask, hey, can our dog say hello? And you would get close enough, and you are often within 3 feet of that other person as your two dogs say hi on leash. And now we're avoiding that. So the dogs that used to have all this social interaction are now seeing that not only is mom and dad avoiding these other situations, but the dog wants to go say hi and can't. And now the leash gets tight, so now the dog feels uncomfortable as they're looking at another dog, and that other dog's pulling out to say hi, and they're feeling uncomfortable, and then they'll kind of start with this reactivity thing. So I actually have even seen it in my own dog, and he's a super friendly little guy, but he's like, hey, something's not right here. And he would bark at another dog, which I never used to see him do. So this is kind of another part of it, of kind of a desocialization epidemic for dogs that were social that aren't able to be social. And then picking up on their owner's emotions and feelings is just adding to the dog feeling like they need to figure out how to have some sort of form of predictability so they can be confident in their environment.
Wow, yeah, that's fascinating. And I mean, yeah, nobody's told them that we have to social isolate. So you're right, all of this. Somebody should really communicate a memo to them. That's great. And the other thing that's been coming up, I mean, I have to admit it, I even mulled over the idea myself, was a few of my friends, everyone's home and not much to do. And so, hey, great time to get a puppy. And I mean, and I hadn't even crossed my mind till you said it earlier, that what would be missing from this is that opportunity to socialize this puppy. And yeah, I've noticed that the SPCA is still allowing adoptions, but just one person at a time and things like that. So do you recommend taking this time to get a puppy because there's time to train, be around the family, or do you think that maybe it's better to wait till there's a more predictable routine? And maybe, yeah, because there's probably going to be a time when everyone does go back to work and now this puppy has adjusted to things and has to be disrupted.
Yeah, it depends. We definitely are seeing so many people getting puppies right now. It's actually becoming a busier and busier time for us right now, with people phoning and saying, I just got this dog. But we need to, there's a lot to unpack there. Rescuing a dog, getting a puppy from a breeder, reputable breeder, or, a breeder off of, Kijiji, whatever. There's all sorts of options right now. And I think there's a few things to look at. And one is making sure, number one, that when things do kind of go back to some sort of form of normal, that you're still going to have time for a dog. So we have time now, which makes it seem like a really great idea. But some people have said, I've never had time. My husband and I, we travel, we work all the time, but now we're not traveling, we're not working as much. So they decide to get a dog. But what happens when things go back and they are traveling and they are working? And, what happens to the dog then? And then the other thing that we noticed, yesterday, I had a conversation with someone who just adopted a dog, and it's a rescue dog that they got. And this dog automatically is, within hours of getting it, the dog was up on the couch on top of the new owner and growling and snapping at the older dog that has been in that house for many years. And one of the things is we can find some really great dogs in our shelters, and dogs definitely deserve, another chance. One of the things with that, though, is a lot of times people don't give up Lassie. They don't give up the really great dogs. Those dogs a friend or family member would often easily take. So depending on how old this dog is or where this rescue dog came from, they could come loaded with a bunch of challenges that you have to work through as a new owner. And then getting a puppy, last week I talked to someone who got a brand new puppy. They were looking for a puppy for a while. Now's a good time. The kids are at home, that story. But they wanted a puppy now. And so they had an idea. They had a breeder in mind for a lab that they wanted to get, but the dog wasn't going to be ready for months. And so then they decided to get a dog now from someone on Kijiji, and the puppy has left mom way too early. So a great dog starts with a great puppy. So the best chance we can have at having a dog that is fun to be with, that's a good family member, and that, we can, I like to call it experiencing freedom. You get to go more places with a good dog, and you get to do more things with a good dog, but you also get to do more things without your dog if they're a good dog. So it comes both ways, but really making sure that if you're going to take on a dog for, the next 15, 17 years, that you are thinking ahead, and the start of that dog's life now is some of the most critical time for that. So with socialization, it's a really big challenge. We are still running puppy classes. They look different. They're online like this, but they're working really well. They're live and they're interactive, and we can offer lots of coaching and support. And then we also offer, our daycare is open. We're considered an essential service. So thank goodness for that. Owners have an opportunity to have their dog, their puppy, come and socialize with other dogs. It's a little different because it would be nice for owners to learn how that socialization should look. And in person, that's a little tricky right now, but we are doing our best to give that information and support for the puppies so that they can have that proper socialization. The other part that I just want to point out that's so important is not just the socialization with other dogs, but socialization with people. So everybody can learn to live with a dog who doesn't like other dogs, but it is incredibly difficult to live with a dog who doesn't like other people. And the best time to influence a dog and get them comfortable with other people and liking people, especially strangers, is in the first 12 weeks of their life. So from the time a dog comes home, which should be at 8.5 weeks old, up into 12 weeks of age, that puppy should meet 100 different people, 100 in that time period. And that's strangers, from kids to seniors, everything. And right now with social distancing, I'm not exactly, I haven't quite figured that one out yet.
Skype? Doesn't exactly work the same, hey, with a dog through a video lens. But wow, that's fascinating. There's so much of that. I'm glad I held off on the puppy purchase. Yeah, and Tessa, is that something you recommend from a psychologist point of view, the puppy purchase, the adopting of a dog right now? Or again, would you say that sort of is making sure you have to take care of yourself first?
It has always been a rule of thumb from a mental health perspective, never to make any major decisions when you are not feeling completely grounded, right? Like, don't decide whether or not you're going to leave your job or your spouse or buy a puppy when you are in an unsettled state, because you don't know if you're just reacting to try and ease that anxiety or if that's something that you truly do want. And so there are some people that may be coping really well. Like I've talked with people that they already work from home, so they were used to this whole setup. Their kids are thriving in the environment because maybe they have more space, or they are liking the different routine. So there are people that might actually be in a grounded space to be able to go and say, like, yeah, this is a great time for us to buy a puppy because we can dedicate more resources to it, and we're reconfiguring our lives right now. But as a general rule, and obviously my world is skewed because the people that come to see me are the ones that are struggling. Right? So the people that are struggling, I think that it's always like rule of thumb, never make any major decisions until you're grounded, because you don't know whether or not that's from your fully like the way I like to say it is like a whole brain perspective, which is your frontal lobe is on board and you are knowing like what are the consequences to each of your behaviors.
Wow. Yeah, I see that. Yeah, that's great. Wow, lots of wonderful information here. Yeah, I think as we tie things up, we can just maybe speak to what both of your businesses look like now in the COVID reality, how you're still supporting your clients. Tracie, you said that that's wonderful that you're able to support people with puppies at home and through much like how we're doing right here. That's great. And just if you want to direct people to the resource of your website and how they can go about getting in touch with you if they need. And yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah. You can find us on website, which is www.clevercanines.ca. You can also phone us at 403-226-BARK, which is 226-2275. And we answer the phones all the time even if we're not in the office, our phones will likely reach a live voice somewhere.
Awesome. That's great. It's wonderful. And Tessa, yeah, how do people go about getting in contact with you at Serenity Now Wellness Centre, and what does the COVID world look like on your side?
So we have been mandated to only offer online and phone conversations, counseling services. But we still have been working successfully with that. So people can't see us face to face anymore. But with situations like this, it's still a great opportunity. I especially like the face to face because then you can see what people are experiencing. You can track the nonverbals. So though it's not as the same as being in person, we all miss that. There's still that ability to connect and work through if you're really struggling and you can do over the phone. But we also have the online piece, which is relatively easy to use from a technology perspective.
Perfect. And the website that they could go to find us is just
serenitynowwellness.ca. Or you can also look at, we have serenitynowwellness.org because we're currently offering both pro bono and sliding fee scales to support people that are struggling additionally with financial stresses during this crisis.
Perfect. Wonderful. Okay, well, that's so great. Love to thank Tracie from Canines and Tessa from Serenity Now Wellness. There's a lot more stuff we could dive into here. I'd love to hear about the way the animal brain mirrors the human brain under stress. But for today, I think that's a great place to leave it. Thanks so much for tuning in, and see you guys next time.
Thanks for having us.